Welcome everyone to this episode of Beyond the Crucible. I'm Gary Schneeberger, the co-host of the show and the communications director for Crucible Leadership. And you have clicked play on, we hope you've clicked subscribe to, a podcast that deals in crucible experiences. Now, if you don't know what a crucible experience is, chances are you've experienced one. A crucible experience is something that it's a failure, it's a setback, it's a tragedy, it's a trauma. It's those events in our lives that can knock the wind out of our sails, that can knock the wind out of our lungs, that can truly change the trajectory of our lives. Here's the good news. We talk about them on Beyond the Crucible, not to build a virtual campfire so we can sit around and swap war stories about how bad things were. We talk about them here to offer hope that on the other side of our crucibles, there can be a better life. There can be a better time. We can learn the lessons of those crucibles, and we can move forward toward what Warwick, the founder of Crucible Leadership, calls a life of significance. And speaking of Warwick Fairfax, the host of the show and the Lego master of Beyond the Crucible, welcome in. This is going to be a fascinating show, and listeners will understand why when I read the bio of our guest.
Absolutely. Very much looking forward to it.
So our guest today is Dov Baron, who is an Inc. magazine top 100 leadership speaker, a #1 Fortune 500 podcast host, entrepreneur magazine contributor, and loyalty authority, guiding us in how to recognize and nurture a dragon and nurture dragons. Dragons are the top talent hidden in our organizations. A dragon leader is not a position. It's someone who's always pushing to improve and wants those they serve to reach their full potential. Dov's humor and no BS style is contagious. As a master storyteller, he is considered to be one of the leading authorities on actualized leadership. Actualized leadership means getting the results you set out to achieve in the most meaningful manner. Working with diverse leaders and executive teams, Dov filters common bonds to create fiercely loyal cultures. You can't achieve loyalty without meaning, and talent only stay when they feel they are part of something larger than themselves. Besides being a best-selling author of One Red Thread and Fiercely Loyal, Dov has been named one of Inc. magazine's top 100 leadership speakers to hire and as one of the top 30 global leadership gurus. He has spoken to the United Nations, the World Management Forum in Iran, the New York National Speakers Association, and the Servant Leadership Institute. In June 1990, while free rock climbing, Dov fell approximately 120 feet and landed on his face. There's more details here in the bio. I got a feeling him telling the story to Warwick in a little bit's going to be better, so I'm going to skip that part and move on to say, Dov shares how dragons are born in fire. Experiences that could destroy you instead can birth purpose, passion, and hunger to champion others, to nurture the dragon fire in ourselves, our families, our communities, and our companies. Dov believes that the world needs more dragon leaders committed to living their purpose, standing in their truth, and empowering others to find their fire to do the same. This, Warwick, is going to be an exciting episode of Beyond the Crucible.
Well, Dov, thanks so much for being here. I love the image you have of the dragon leader, the dragon's lair, the fire that might destroy us, but yet there are things we can learn from it. Just your whole notion of both helping leaders improve their organizations, but helping them improve themselves. And we'll get into your book, One Red Thread, when you sort of expound on this a fair bit about purpose and significance and success. But before we get into that, I'd love to hear, and obviously we'll get to the fall, the physical fall. Some of us have had metaphorical falls, but you've had a big physical one. But I'd love to hear a little bit about the background. We've talked off air, just like you're from UK and you've even spent time in my homeland, Australia, on the other side in Perth. So just tell us just a little bit about Dov Baron and just family growing up and kind of what's the backstory behind Dov.
Well, first of all, gentlemen, thank you for having me on. It's a pleasure and an honor. I'm grateful to be here, and I am appreciative of what you're doing and the work that you're doing. And I think it's really important for those of you who are listening. Remember that these guys put these shows together. They don't get paid to do this. They're sharing this with you to give you value. So make sure that you do rate, review, and subscribe to the show, because they're giving you quality information all the time, and I'm honored to be here to serve in that capacity. As a sort of Reader's Digest version of my background, which we can spend a long time on, but we won't. I promise. I was born in Northern England. I've been gone for more than 40 years, so I've been gone much longer than I ever lived there. But I was born in abject poverty, surrounded by crime, violence, addiction, all kinds of traumas that we don't have to get into, I watched people be defeated before they'd even reached their teens. It was clear to me that these people had already been defeated and were never going to be anything else. And it's very interesting because I don't know anybody else who made it out from my neighborhood. But I do know other people who made it out who I didn't know. So, for instance, Albert Finney, the famous actor, was from where I was from, as was Robert, what was his name? Last name, sorry, just went blank on him. He played Jesus of Nazareth. He made it out. Ben Kingsley and several others who were all from the exact neighborhood I grew up in, which was... I think there's a technical term for it, Shitsville. Yeah, that's the place. It was a pretty terrible place and pretty oppressive. But I made a decision when I was 14 years old to leave. I had made a commitment and my mom thought it was crazy that I had that idea, and I decided I was going to get out. I did. So I got out of Salford, and particularly the ghetto inside of Salford, which is called Lower Broughton. And I made that commitment. Nobody thought it was true. I knew it was true. And as I got a little bit older, the drinking age in England is 18, which means everybody's in the pub at 15, which I was. And so, I'd sit around with my mates and I'd say, I'm out of here. This place sucks. And they'd say, yeah, it does. And then one day I came at 20 and said, I'm out of here. And they're like, yeah, we are too. No, I've got a ticket. I'm going. You going to Spain for a holiday? No, I'm leaving. And nobody would believe that. And it was interesting because all that yakniing about how I was going to leave and they were going to leave suddenly became, well, you can't leave. We got Man United. We got Man City. We got Boddington's Bitter. We got fish and chips. You got your family. Yeah, and I got to go. So I began to travel. Now, I'd already studied. I studied as a small child. My mother thought I was possessed. So she shipped me off to the rabbis because I would say things that were just strange. And I began to study Kabbalah. And so my travels at 21 was to travel and start studying with all these spiritual masters. So I studied Vedanta, which is Hindu philosophy, Buddhism, the Tao, Coptic and Gnostic Christianity, Kabbalah, all these different religions, studied and lived with these masters, and then discovered that even though I had great spiritual knowledge, and I met people who had great spiritual knowledge, they couldn't get their stuff together. Mm-hmm. So I started studying psychology. I studied Jungian psychology, hence the metaphor of the dragons. And found there, I became a Jungian therapist and got really sick of people moaning and complaining but not doing anything. That wasn't working for me. So I started studying what was called the psychology of excellence, which today is called leadership. So I started studying these people who were enormously successful, and I found many of them were kind of soulless. They were lost. Had all the toys, but were kind of lost. I was already working with people who were in a similar position to what you were in, Warwick, back in the day. But I could find that they were lost people. So I started then studying, putting those things together. And in about 83, I stumbled into quantum physics when I was in Melbourne. I lived in Perth, but I was in Melbourne on a trip. Right. Studied studying quantum physics, and from there studied studying neuroscience, then later wrote a thesis on all these, how they come together: quantum physics, metaphysics, and psychology with neuroscience. So that was kind of the background. And my friend just came to me one day, who owned a national menswear company that you may or may not remember, or Rick, it was called Renoir's. Do you remember Renoir's menswear clothing? It was a national clothing company. Okay. The guy who owned it was a friend of mine, and he said, "I want you to come speak to my managers." I'm like, "About what? I'm not a speaker." And he said, "Anything you want." And I went, "Are you crazy?" And he goes, "No." I said, "Okay. I don't know. I don't understand." I said, and he said, "But I have one condition." I said, "What's that?" He goes, "You come dressed exactly as you are today." Now, you should know this is 1984, right, and my hair is below my chest. And I had that old Howard Stern hair, you know, the black ringlet curls. Right. That is what my hair is like. It's thick, black, curly hair. And I have earrings, as you mentioned earlier, Gary. I have earrings. But in those days, they were big enough to hang parrots off. Right? And I was a bodybuilder. And when you're a bodybuilder and you're in your early 20s, it's important that everybody knows by looking at you immediately that you're a bodybuilder. So you always wear T-shirts that are too tight. And ripped jeans and the designer stubble and all the long hair and all that. But I also used to wear beautiful suits. That's how I met him, because he made my suits. And he said, "But I want you to wear this." I said, "But can't I just wear a suit?" And he goes, "Nope, I want you to look like this." And I go, "Well, I can put my hair in a tail." He goes, "No, I don't want your hair in a ponytail. I want it to look like this." And my hair was like wild. I turned up that day as he instructed. I put my head in the door, and I saw everybody at this long, you know, the old boardroom tables.
Right.
And they saw this hippie stick his head through the door, and they look at me and they give me what we called in the UK the F off nod. The F off nod is F off, you're in the wrong room. And they give me that look, and I just stayed there, waited, and then they said, "Let's welcome our speaker, Dov." Steve says that. I walk in and, you know, jaws hit the desk. And I said, "And you remember this work. You remember this time," because I said, you know, the whole issue with how the Aboriginal people of Australia were treated was really high level stuff. It was like that was becoming very aware, the white rabbit fence and all that stuff. And I said, "Put your hand up if you're a racist." Well, you know, who's going to put their hand up? Nobody. I knew that. See, I don't remember my speech, but I remember this. I said, "Put your hand up if you're racist." Nobody put their hand up. I said, "Put your hand up if you would judge somebody by the color of their skin or the way they look in any way, shape, or form." Nobody put their hand up. And I said, "You're a bunch of freaking liars."
Wow.
Every single one of you judged me by the way I look. What you don't know is I'm your customer. Because the reason I know Steve is you guys make my suits. Yes, I look like this, but I don't always look like this. And if I'd have walked in your store, you would have lost a customer. But I walked in when Steve was there, and he got a customer. Now, I don't remember anything else I said, but I looked over at Steve and thought, "Oh my God, you know, I've pooed the bed on this one." And he had a smile that was so big, he knew what he was doing. He's far smarter than me. So that was the beginning of my speaking career. And it really is what it means to be authentic, is show up as you with your personal, what it is you bring to a situation, and call out what is the lie. And one of the challenges we have in leadership today is that nobody calls out the lies. And that's what happened. So that was the beginning of the career. So that's a very long, short version of my story.
Oh my gosh. I mean, that is so fascinating. I mean, you know England far better than I do, but, you know, I went to college in England. The college I was at Oxford, Balliol, was, you know, pretty progressive. So it was more diverse than the other colleges. So we had folks from Northern England who was like, do they like people like us in Oxford? Because, you know, they were sons of coal miners. I mean, they were, Northern Ireland, all the rest of it. So, and still back then, the classes didn't mix. This is like early 80s, which is pretty sad, even within an Oxford college. And that's a whole nother story, but so I'm somewhat familiar with the situation. But there's this mentality, at least when I was there, that, you know, it was so rigid that if you thought that you could do something better, you'd be like, "So, you know, we're not good enough for you. You kind of don't, what's the problem?" Like, is almost discouraged from moving out of whatever situation. But what you did showed so much courage. People were like, "Well, everybody talks about getting out, but who does it?" I mean, it just seemed like, did you feel like there wasn't like the whole bunch of people like you, that you were different than your mates in that sense, that you had the courage to make a choice that a lot of other people didn't. I'm not trying to judge others, but I mean, what you did
not at all.
was so different than
Yeah, you see,
people
for
you
me, when I
knew.
looked at everything around me, so my original inspiration was being 10 years old, walking into the living room, seeing my mum crying.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't unusual to see my mother crying, but something was different. And I said, "What's wrong, Mum?" I'm the eldest son. "What's wrong, Mum?" And she's brushing the tears away, and her glasses are pushing up. And she says, "He's dead." She pointed at the TV set. Who is? I'm looking at the TV set. I mean, this is not a soccer player. He's
Right,
not on Coronation Street. I don't know who he
right.
is. And then suddenly I hear, "I have a dream that one day," and I stopped and I could suddenly hear it. And I became awestruck by the idea that this black man, to a 10-year-old on the other side of the world, this black Christian preacher on the other side of the world could impact a poor Jewish white woman
Mm-hmm.
to the level of tears was enthralling to me. It was like, how does that happen? I was blown away by that. And it was in that moment I think that spark was awakened of wanting to have an impact and feeling the constraints of where I lived about being able to have that impact. It just didn't seem possible. And as you said, Warwick, wisely, that the class thing rather, is insane there. Quick story. I was back there 7 years ago. I was speaking to, because I do a lot of work with very high net worth families, right? Multi-generational high net worth families. So I was at Scone Palace, which is where they used to knight the Scottish kings, speaking with these incredibly wealthy families, as the authority figure, and I'm guiding them in how to have better family relations, etc. And after the training, after that, my time in Scotland, which is 5 days, I went back to London to do some meetings. And I was introduced to some people. And I'm sitting with this one guy who's obviously he's been to Oxford, and
Right, right,
Cambridge,
right.
has to talk like that. But he was lovely. I mean, he was
Sure.
really a lovely guy. But, he had a stick up his ass that was so far it was tackling his tonsils, right? And he was really nice. And then he says to me, "Oh, so where in Canada are you from?" And I said, "I'm from Vancouver." And he said, "Have you always lived there?" And I said, "Well, no, actually, I wasn't born there. I just have lived there since '88. And he goes, "Oh, where are you from?" I said, "Well, I used to live in Australia for many years." And he goes, "Oh, so you're an Australian?" And I said, "Well, no, actually, I'm British. I was born here." And he goes, "Oh, really? And where were you from?" And I said, "From Manchester." The conversation, this guy loved me. I could feel the
Sure,
vibe.
sure.
We were getting along great. The conversation ended right there. Within 30 seconds, he said, "Oh, I have to go." He'd invited me to a private club. He never followed back. He said, "I have to go because that class thing is so drilled in. You're not my people." If I was Canadian, it was fine. But
You
if I
know,
was British and I was born in the class system, that wouldn't be okay. So
it's
that's another example of how we get pushed out and that we have to climb over that. We have to say, "You know what? I don't care about your barriers."
I mean, that's really appalling. And I want to get to your book and what you do, but just since you mentioned that, it's funny. You'll appreciate this. I had a friend at my college who was from Manchester. Bright red hair, outgoing guy, incredibly smart. I mean, you have to be, obviously, to be at Oxford. And was studying economics. So he went to interview at the top London merchant banks, and none of them would offer him a job. This guy went to one of the best colleges at Oxford. The guy's really smart, wonderful with people, but he had a Manchester accent. He didn't have a shot. And I just thought, how can you not hire this guy? Don't tell me he's not qualified. I mean, he's an Oxford degree, for goodness sake. I mean, it just, yeah. And the ironic thing is, I mean, I come from about as privileged and a wealthy background as you can, but because I was Australian, the British upper crust view Australians as somewhere between lower working class and convict, somewhere in that realm. So I
Because you
got,
come from the Pommies,
I got
prisoners of Mother England.
I got no respect, but yeah, I could mix with any class, so to speak, because I didn't fit in. Anyway, whole nother story. But yeah,
before we
I'm with
leave
you.
this subject,
Yeah.
I have to fill in for listeners who are like, Dov said at the beginning there were several people who he knew left what he called Shitsville and succeeded.
Yeah.
One of them he said was Jesus of Nazareth, and he said Robert. I just looked it up. It's Robert Powell. Just so
Robert
everybody
Powell,
knows,
yes.
Robert Powell is one of Dov's fellow travelers from his hometown. So I just wanted to make sure people knew that.
Robert Powell is a Salford lad who made it out, but he didn't keep his Salford accent, that's for sure.
Well,
But
yeah.
there again, neither did I. So,
Well, but I mean, you've been a lot of different places, but so I love what you do with One Red Thread and all. Just briefly, because I want to shift into that. Yeah, you were a successful speaker in leadership and doing well, and then you had this physical fall, which it seems like you were doing well. You were focused on helping leaders. My sense is it shifted your perspective on leadership. So talk about the fall, the physical fall, and how that shifted your perspective.
well, thank you. June 1990, I was the most successful I'd ever been up until that point. National tours, speaking, TV, radio, newspapers, magazines, all those things. It was pretty great. That moment of thinking, oh my God, this is, I've made it. What a joke. Such a clown. I even believe my own press. And I came back from a tour. I was exhausted, took a few days off, went up to a place called Whistler, which you may be familiar with. The Winter Olympics 2010 were there in British Columbia. Had a couple of days hanging out. But what people didn't know about me at that time is, aside from doing the things I was doing speaking, I was also a full-blown addict. Now, when I say addict, I'm not talking about drugs. I'm not talking about alcohol. I'm talking about adrenaline. I was a major adrenaline junkie. I did stupid stuff all the time. And at that time, we'd spent the day. We'd had a lovely day out by the lake and all that. And then we came back to a place called Brandywine Falls, which is this magnificent glacial waterfall. It's about 200 feet up. The water comes rushing down the fall off the glacier. And in June, you can imagine that it's now nice and warm. The glacier's melting, but it's still the end of spring. So it's still been pretty wet everywhere. And we watch this water come down, and there's a view site. And I said to my buddy, let's see if we can hike down. There's no path, right? And we're not dressed for it. But he's like, yeah, okay. So we hike down. We get to the bottom. I said, let's see if we can get behind the waterfall. He's like, what are you talking about? I go, there's a gap between where the water comes off the edge and behind there's a wall of rock. And he goes, how wide is it? I go, I don't know. I go, see if we can get behind it. Well, it's about 4 feet wide. And, inappropriately dressed with 70 mile an hour spray coming off that waterfall as it lands. We're climbing over these mossy rocks. We get behind the waterfall, which is filled with negative ions. Negative ions make you feel positive. It charges the body positively. It feels fantastic. When I came out on the other side, I felt like Superman. I felt like I had a big S tattooed on my chest and I could do anything. It was like, yeah, we were inside going, yeah. If you'd have put your hand out, that waterfall pressure would have ripped my arm off. It was that powerful. So I said when we got on the other side, I said to my mate, let's not hike back. He goes, should we take the elevator? And I'm like, no, let's free climb. Now, you may be a bit nervous about mountain climbing and think that people in mountain climb are crazy. I understand that, but mountain climbers have gear, they have safety lines, they have hooks, they have all those kinds of things. And you go, well, okay, but free climbing is crazy, right? Well, it's more crazy for sure, but you have chalk, you have the right clothing on, you made sure your sight is set. Okay. Free climbing while you're soaking wet with the wrong footwear on and the wrong clothing, that is insane. And that's what we began to do. And at 120 feet, I reached for a rock, and that rock dislodged a bigger rock that came down and hit me in the face, full force, and knocked me right down 120 feet, 12 stories. And I landed on boulders below, not on grass or gravel, but boulders. And my head opened up like a coconut, just split me wide open. I've had somewhere around 10 or 11 reconstructive surgeries. And I can tell you the gory details that you don't need to know that. I did die 5 times during that process. But I was from Salford. I was a tough lad. I was a boxer. I'd been a martial artist. I was a trainer of leaders. You can't tell me, man. I'm coming back. So people would say to me, how you doing? And with my jaw wired closed, I'd say, I'm coming back. I'm great. I'm coming back. It was a lie. It was a positive bullshit attitude. It was a lie. Because when I was in the quietness of my own time, I was deeply, darkly depressed. And I felt like my life was over. And that went on for a long time. And I'd go out with my mates, and there'd be nothing would be funny. And I'm a funny guy, and I hang out with funny guys. Nothing would be funny. And I just think, oh, that's it, my life is over. And then one night, my mates took me out, the lads, and I had a great night. And I laughed for the first time, and I thought, oh my God, I am coming back. This is great. I was in just a fantastic mood. And I came home, one of the lads dropped me off. I came home, I opened the back door into my house, and I was just feeling so much joy. And the light from outside shone across the kitchen floor. And across the floor, I could see garbage everywhere. There were meat wrappers and coffee grinds and kitty litter and empty cans, and it smelled horrible. And I went from being in pure joy to being in pure rage. I knew exactly who the culprit was, and I was going to find the culprit, and I felt like killing the culprit. Like that rage was so fierce. And when I got into the living room, there was the culprit, curled up all cozy on the couch, comfy. And I put my hand up like this to strike. And about halfway down, that's not who I am. I'm not a violent person, even though I've been trained in those things. It's not my nature. I stopped and put my arms down instead and scooped up the cat into my arms. And the cat was cold and the cat was dead. And I fell onto my knees and began to first cry, but then sob. Just, and I was a couple of minutes and realized I'm not crying for the cat. It was the first time I'd given myself permission to feel the grief of who I had been was dead. And that moment there, and I spent a couple of hours on that floor crying, I realized I had 3 paths that were in front of me. The one I'd been trying to be on, which was, I'm coming back. Well, I got news for you. Nothing in life goes backwards. This wasn't going to work. And I knew it in that moment. The second path was the most seductive of all the paths. And that was to stay right there, to remain a victim, to have this great story. I gave it everything, and, the gods were against me. Fate was against me. It's not my fault. I'm a victim. And the third option was to find out why I'm here. What is the purpose of my life? Now, if you'd have asked me, was my life on purpose the day before I fell, an hour, 5 minutes before I fell, I would have said yes. But I never really looked into that. And that was the moment when I had to start looking for my red thread to find out what was that fire within my belly that I needed to serve in the world. And that was the transformation. So when people say, did the fall change your life? They think it must have, but it didn't. That's not what changes your life. It's not that moment when the thing happens. It's the moment when everything seems to go back to normal. Remember, I went out with the lads, I had a good laugh. It was that moment I could come back. I could be normal. It's that moment when you have a choice. So there's the pivotal moment, which is the fall, but there's the choice moment where everything can go back to normal and you go, no, enough. Something else has to happen. That was the transformational moment.
And what I love about that story, Dov, is, and we see this a lot with guests on this show, is that your crucible happens and you don't bounce back immediately. You don't bounce back in a day or a week or a month, and that's Warwick's story too. It took time. It can take time, and it's okay, listener, for it to take time for you to learn the lessons of your crucible and come back. It took Dov time. You certainly know it's taken Warwick time to come back, but it's important, right? It's critical. Had you jumped too quickly, you wouldn't have learned.
Time. You're absolutely right. You've got to give yourself that time. But I want to push back a little bit and just say, you're not coming back.
Right.
You're coming forward. You can't come back. Listen, I want you to get this. The crucible that happened in your life wasn't a mistake. Now, believe me, if somebody had said to me, "Oh, this is all for the good, and it's all going to work out great, Dov," I'd have punched them in the throat.
Absolutely.
Right? That's just a stupid thing to say to somebody who's going through a lot of pain. The truth is that will be true maybe 2 years from the moment of it happening, but not in the moment, because in the moment it's hell. There's no doubt about that. But there is no back. There's only forward or stagnation. Stagnation is the commitment to, I'm a victim of. But the commitment moving forward is to say, what is this? So I believe, this is my truth, it's not the truth.
Sure.
These events happen to wake us up from something and to wake us up to something. From something you've been and to something that's always been within you, but you've never allowed out. And that will take time because it becomes an identity crisis. That's why it takes time. It'll take no time at all if you could get over your identity, but you can't because we're humans and we have an ego. So putting that ego to rest for a while is difficult. That's why it takes time. That's all it is.
Yeah, it makes so much sense. So as you look at your life, what was the from and the to for you? And I totally agree that certainly in my experience, you can't go back. Who I am now is very different than who I was before the takeover and the aftermath, that it's a transformative moment that you were forever changed. So what was the from and to for you?
The interesting thing was I didn't, even though it was true before, I didn't know it. And so the from was externally referenced. So what I mean by that is the from was about how I would get applause, how I would get recognition. And that a lot depended on who I could save. So I was looking to, in the Jungian cycle, I was looking to play the hero. Mm-hmm. So if I was the hero, they would applaud me. I would be the savior. They would applaud me. That was my from, right? And so I thought, I'm a rock star because I saved this person. I'm a rock star because, I could do this. And then it became to, which is I'm not here to save anybody. Why? Because nobody's broken. You can't save people who are not broken. Nobody's broken. I don't have that belief in my head at all. Nobody is broken. What they are is they have source code inside of their programming that's faulty. If you can find the code in there that's faulty code, which is what I do, and you eliminate that code, you find out where you bring them right back to their soul. There's nobody to fix. Nobody's broken. The only people, if somebody is broken, there's actually a commitment to be broken. They don't want to move, and that's fine. You can do that too, but that's what you want to do. Okay, fine.
Yeah, that's awesome. So, you're different than you were. It's not all about the applause, the success. It's about others. I mean, I love some of the concepts you have in one red thread. It's, sometimes you don't really discover what the thread is as you put it through the tapestry of your lives until there's pain. People talk about purpose and the pain and all, and you talk about that and just purpose versus passion and I love sort of almost like the dark side and the light side. It's almost like not quite a Star Wars metaphor, but you use one example, a fellow by the name of Franco, and just sometimes there's so much in there that somebody's blind spot can be actually the source of light, sort of the counter to what they're trying to give to the world. I think it was maybe in this example. So, it's that there's, I guess, probably a good place to start. There's a lot of places to start here, but you've talked about, significance and success, and obviously you want to empower and help those that you speak to, those you work with and consult and coach to be successful, but yet you want them to have purpose. I think you put it, true purpose. Talk about why that's success is fine, but success in of itself is not satisfying. I think you have a chapter that talks about what's missing, or I'll be happy when. So talk about that whole concept of it's not just success, it's success and.
So, to do that, we have to start by addressing the misconcept, the mass hypnosis, and the mass hypnosis is of this idea around individualism and capitalism. And I'm pretty obviously an individualist, right? And I'm obviously a capitalist, but not without compassion, not without consciousness, not at all. So what does that mean in this context? It means that if you're living your life in any way, even inside your own head, not necessarily saying it out loud, I'll be happy when I find the right partner. I'll be happy when we get married. I'll be happy when we have a kid. I'll be happy when we get a house, when we get a bigger house, when we get a bigger car, when we buy a yacht, when we get another million, another billion. You are never going to get there. It's never going to happen. Because the problem with it is, and this is the hook, this is the drug, is all those things you're saying I'll be happy when, they all work. That's the hook. They do make you happier, but it's so brief. So you shoot the main line of heroin, which is $1 million in the bank, and it's like, wow! And you're excited, and maybe you're even excited for a month because it's your first $1 million. But you go, yeah, and then it starts to wear off, and you go, oh, clearly what I need is $5 million, but now it only lasts 2 weeks. And before you know where you're at, it's fleeting, all of it, fleeting. So what are you looking for? What you're looking for is you're looking for an external reference point of your own joy. It doesn't exist externally. It exists internally. And that's not some psychological babble or pop psych shit. We're talking about real stuff. You got to look at what is it in me? What is it I'm actually looking for? And I'm going to give you, the listener right now, the clue. Because I said, away from and towards, right? You wake up from, you wake up towards. What you're waking up from is that you've been running away from your pain. So let me give it to you straight. Most people's pain is hidden by their success. We use success to hide our pain. And we hide our pain behind our ego, which is our identity. So we never get to the pain, we never get to the purpose because we're pursuing externalized success. If you don't stop and go, hold on a second. So here's the question. I'm going to give you the question right now so you can have the answer. Ask yourself this question. It's a very simple question, but the answer, it will take some time. It'll take some commitment. And that is, what is it that I needed when I was a child that I couldn't get or couldn't get enough of? Now, listen to what I said. As I told you, I work with very high-level, multi-generational families of wealth, and it's the same question I asked them. What is it you needed that you couldn't get, or you couldn't get enough of when you were a child? Well, I had everything. You know, my dad put me in a private school, but is that what you needed?
Right.
So one of the guys I worked with, he said, well, I guess, okay, well, in that case, I guess I needed a connection with my dad. I said, okay, good, that's fine. And he said, no, hold on a second, because he wants to protect his ego. He goes, I had that. I said, oh, did you? I go, yeah. I go, how did you get it? He goes, fishing. My dad and I would go fishing. Right. I go, great. When you'd go fishing, would you connect at all? And he goes, no, not really, but we were just together, and that was great. I go, all right, that's fine. Can I ask you how many times that happened? He said, sure. I said, how many? 2. It happened twice. Do you think you might have needed a little more of that? And he goes, yeah. And I said, tell me your life hasn't been about trying to get connection with people who don't want to connect with you. The guy starts to bawl. He goes, that's my first 2 marriages. That's my first 2 marriages. Trying to connect with women who don't want to connect with me. I said, yeah, it's not gender specific. It's what you needed. So you need to serve the world in some way through serving a connection. Now that's vague and we have to drill down, and that's when we get into the really powerful work.
Sure.
But as another example, a lady I was working with, she's she owns a real estate, I don't know what you would call it, but it's an empire. And she does very well with that. And Everybody has always said you should work with kids, and she's amazing with kids. But she's in real estate, and she loves real estate. She loves that world, and she's very, very good at it. And she loves kids, but she doesn't ever want to work with them because in her brain, there's a picture. I'm going to run a kindergarten? I don't think so. But now we've got her writing books for children that are related to real estate. It feeds right into her empire. It hits the things she needed because guess what? She had to move 14 times between 0 and 10. So she needed somebody who could hold her emotionally while she moved.
And so what you're doing really is, I think, joy and fulfillment, they come internally. Money, success, can't achieve it, as listeners would know. I grew up with about as much, money and privilege as you can grow up with. 150-year-old family business, top of the status tree and all. And so there was ambassadors, prime ministers, people from Hollywood would come because my mother, Lady Mary Fairfax, she would throw parties that was so amazing. People from Hollywood would say, this is something you're not used to. You should go see Lady Fairfax. I mean, she just really knew how to throw a party, and her whole story is a whole nother one. She was born in Poland, and fortunately her parents emigrated. They were Jewish, emigrated in the 20s, and if they'd stayed in Poland, obviously would not have been good. But she was just this force of nature. But just so many, I'm not so much judging my parents, they were wonderful people, but some of the people at these parties, they just wanted to regale you with how successful and powerful, and it's just, so really ever since then, money is never really, I mean, I don't dislike money. I'm, fortunate, very comfortable, but it's not really attractive to me. Faith is certainly very important to me. So just finding that sense of fulfillment within yourself, and I may follow, sort of the Christian religion, but, you've studied many religions, philosophies. It'd probably be hard to find one that doesn't advocate finding joy and fulfillment in some fashion from within. Anything that's
from within
dealing
and
into
from
truth.
within in service of.
Exactly.
Every
Exactly
religion
right.
talks about in service of. I've been asked many times, what's the best religion? And my answer is always the same. Actually, I don't like religion. I studied all the religious philosophy. I don't like them. And they go, oh, well, how come you... But the religious philosophy at the center of them all, I love.
And I think that's...
Because it's identical, which is treat yourself with respect, treat other people with respect, and be in service of others.
Absolutely.
Okay, that's pretty simple. Be in love and service of others. Oh, yeah, all right. Do I have to show up? Do I have to show up at the big house on Sunday? No. Do I have to show up at the big house on Friday night? No. Do I have to eat certain things? No. Am I allowed to wear a certain thing? Yep. Anything you want. Okay, good.
And that
you can be black, white, green striped, or a hippie, or a skinhead. Sure, anything you want. Just do that. All right, good.
So I feel like as you're helping leaders understand this, it must be revolutionary, because so often we try to find, love and fulfillment in all the wrong places. It probably, sounds like a country music song or something. I mean, it's, and it's just, and you just see it. And it's like, here we go, the fast cars and the jets and the house in Monte Carlo and whatever else. And it's just tough to be happy. You pretend to be happy because you look a bit of an idiot if you're miserable and show people, but you just help.
But it's Instagram happy.
Right.
It's Instagram happy. It's a picture of you on a private jet with 3 girls who've got push-up bras on while you're getting out of a Bentley you rented. Come on. This is the problem. This is what I'm saying is it's a mass hypnosis. And I understand it because I teach the psychology of marketing. I get it. If you're 20 years old and you're seeing that, you want it.
Right.
Of course you do. Like, who doesn't want to be surrounded by 3 girls in push-up bras on a private jet or anywhere? Yeah, of course. I'm 20. Of course I want that. But it's not going to make you have joy. It's going to give you happiness. Happiness is temporary.
Exactly.
Joy is a state of being. It's not externally referenced. Self-esteem is externally referenced. That's where I lived before I fell. Our self-esteem is externally referenced. Self-worth is internally referenced. Who I am doesn't change by whether you like what I had to say or not. I've probably offended a few people as we've talked today. May have pissed a few people off. That's okay. My job is not to build a wide fence for you to stand on with me in the middle of something. My job is to get you off the fence. Either you're on this journey towards your purpose and serving in the world from your heart and your soul, or you're not. And if you're not, that's okay. You're not on my team. That's all right. I don't dislike you. I don't think you're wrong. You can be whatever you want, but I know who I serve, and you've got to decide that for yourself too. And you can do that incredibly lovingly, but incredibly firmly. And people don't understand that. They either go, I'm either loving and I'm wishy-washy, or I'm firm and I'm an asshole. No, it doesn't have to be that.
I love something you said, Dov, at the outset, and you may not even remember you said it because sound bites sort of fall out of your mouth kind of easily, which is great. As a PR guy, I love that. But you said, and I wrote it down, part of the problem with what we have in leadership circles today is nobody calls out the lie. And what I'm hearing you say as you tell these stories is you've called out your job in some sense, right? True, that your job is to call out the lie for those you help.
But I want to be very clear about that too, Gary, in that I'm calling out a lie the person often doesn't know they're telling. That's the more important. So there are people who are just liars, right? And they know they're lying. But most people don't know they're lying because they've never, the analogy I give is you stand on the top of the hill and in the distance you can see the ocean. And I ask you to describe the ocean, describe it. I take you down the hill and you stand on the shore and I ask you to describe the ocean that you're now standing in front of. You describe it differently. I then make you go for a little swim in the water, in the shallow part of the water, and I ask you to completely different. Then I take you out in my boat and we're a mile out. It's a different ocean again. And then I strap on the tanks and I say, let's dive down. And I take you 30, 40, 50 feet down. It's a different ocean again. None of those things you could have known until you knew about them. So each one of your truths about the ocean was the truth in the context of what you knew. My job is to put the tanks on you. My job is to show you what's underneath that you didn't know was like all the other stuff was a surface understanding, therefore a lie about who you are and why you're actually here. Now, the problem is that we then sell those lies to others, and my job is to call out the mass lie that you've bought into so that you can find your own truth. That's it. I'm not here to make you into me. I have no interest in that whatsoever. That was me before. That was before I fell. Now I'm interested in you being the very best you can be. And if that's not anything to do with my path, that's great, as long as your soul is aligned with that. That's what it means. Because the metaphor of a dragon, dragons in all the myths protect something precious. You maybe remember in Lord of the Rings, in The Hobbit, that the dragon sits on all the gold. That's a metaphor of a dragon always protects that which is precious. And the dragon breathes fire. But what most people don't know about dragons is right here, the scales are impenetrable, but the front scale is translucent. You can see the heartbeat. So this dragon that has enormous power and flaps its wings and breathes fire is incredibly vulnerable and leads with both fire and vulnerability. That's what it means to be a true purposely driven leader in service of what is precious.
Wow. I mean, I feel like there's so many things to say, but even from my perspective, this talks about selling the truth in love. I feel like that is what you try to do. You're speaking truth in service of the friends, neighbors, clients who you speak to. Just all those stories about the guy that said, yes, I had this human connection with my dad like one time or something. I mean, it's there's this longing for connection, and as we find that, who we are, our inner truth, and use that in service of others, at least in my experience, that's where joy and fulfillment come from. Like in my own world, in this podcast, we've probably interviewed 70 plus guests. And when I have a guest, some are prominent, some are not prominent, And when they say, you know what, I felt like I could be vulnerable and share my story and my truth, and I felt like a safe place, I mean, that means everything to me. That
Absolutely.
gives me joy. I mean, I said to my publisher, which sounds a bit strange, who fortunately gets my wavelength, I'm doing my level best to sell as many books as I can, because I'm a believer you either do it well or don't do it at all. But I don't really, my issue is not whether it sells one book or 10,000 or what have you. I just want to be faithful to what I feel like I'm being called to. And I think from your perspective, serve others. If I'm serving others, then that's a win. The numbers will take care of themselves. I mean, I've got a fantastic team in every aspect, but everybody wants joy and fulfillment. Everyone on the planet wants to, and at the end of the day, and I think you talk about this in your book in terms of eulogy, you know, when all's said and done, who wants to have that eulogy that says, Joe, Mary, they were a billionaire, they founded all this, they broke all these records. Really? They want to feel like their kids, their loved ones, and their friends were proud of them. They want to feel like people say, you know what? They made the world a better place. You know? People loved who they were, and maybe nobody's ever heard of them, but maybe, you know what I'm saying?
I do.
And you talk about this in your book, and I feel like, you know, people need to understand, especially successful people, because it's really tough. You've got all sorts of people telling you, as I did at one point in my life, oh, you're wonderful, you're amazing, you know, all to curry favor. And, you know,
they all arrive with a smoke machine and direct it up your skirt.
And even if you see it the first time, after about a couple hours, it tends to break you down. There's only so much praise that we can withstand. Mm-hmm. Your cynicism meter starts getting eroded by, you know, the praise and the adulation. It's tough. As I often say, praise is a pretty tough thing to withstand, but you're really fighting for people's inner soul. In fact, you talk about the soul in your book, I know.
I do.
Towards the end.
Yeah.
It says, here we go. My belief, not necessarily the truth, is that the reason we go into leadership is to reconcile our soul. That's an incredible phrase. So, sorry, meandering a bit here, but does that kind of make sense? That you're fighting for people's inner truth and joy and fulfillment in the right places. But so talk about how does the soul weave itself in there into what you're talking about?
Well, as I said earlier, I don't believe, and by the way, I want to thank you for asking these questions. And these are for you as you listen to this. You know, you want to recognize that even the questions that Warwick is asking me, maybe ask yourself, because this is not for our entertainment. This is for you, in service of you. So, you know, don't be passive in this. Make sure that there's an activity in it. You know, for me, my talking of the soul, again, as I said in the book, it's not the truth, it's my truth. Speaking of the soul is not in the context of anything to do with any religion, although you can put it in that if you want. It's in the context of a spirituality, of something that is beyond me, as in the ego, mind, or beyond me as in the body. And what that is, again, my truth, not the truth. You arrive here on the planet, you are not broken. You are massively brilliant in all kinds of ways that may not fit into the categories by which they determine genius or brilliance. But everybody has their own gifts. However, and this is, you know, my psychology background, however, the desire to fit in, the desire to belong is so powerful that we trade our soul in order to get acceptance. So we trade acceptance for approval. We trade our authenticity, our sense of truth, for the approval of those we need to survive. I mean, think about a bird, right? Think about a giraffe. Think about any other animal. It comes out and it can pretty much take care of itself pretty damn fast. And oftentimes, if it can't, its dad will eat it, or it will, you know, its mother will bugger off, and you're all on your own. We, as you know, humans, we're pretty useless. We're pretty useless for a long time, right? For a long, long time, we can't take care of ourselves. So how do you mitigate that as a being? You look to those who are more powerful than you, And that is the god and goddess of your life in a traditional family, which is mom and dad. They know why the grass is green, why the sky is blue. They know what time you should get up, even though you're still tired. They know what time you should go to bed, even though you're wide awake. They know when you should eat, even though you're not hungry. And they know when you should stop eating, even though you are hungry. They have all the power. So you learn pretty damn fast, if I want to survive, I've got to get along with these people. And as part of that survival, part of your limbic system of your brain is saying, take care of that. What that means is they're that powerful, they must be perfect. And from there, you get what's called defective premise. Defective premise means this, psychologically. It means this. If they don't love me in the way that I need to be loved, and they're perfect, there must be something defective in me. So you begin to disenfranchise parts of yourself. You begin to disenfranchise your soul. Maybe you grow up in an academic family, so you disenfranchise your creativity. Maybe you grow up in an artistic or creative family and you disenfranchise your academic pull. Maybe you are liberal in a conservative family, and so you begin to disenfranchise that part of yourself, or vice versa. You begin to disenfranchise the parts of yourself. And so when I come together with these people who are enormously successful, I will say to them, listen, here's what I want you to know. I don't have $1 billion, you do. That's great. So why am I here? I'm not here to help you make more money, right? And they go, no. Good. Let's get that established, because you are going to start pulling that up as, well, you haven't told me any business strategy. I'm not here for that. What I'm going to tell you is this. What we're going to do will increase your business. How do I know? Because it's never not done that. But that's never the outset. The outset is to bring home the disenfranchised parts of your soul, because your success, and this is important, your success is a result of laser beam targeted focus. It's amazing. What you've done to reach the level of success you have achieved is awe-inspiring, and most people would go, wow, I don't know how you did it. And I'm earnestly in respect of that and honor that. You had to be laser beam focused, which means that maybe family issues and family events went by the side and other things didn't get the care that they needed, but you got to that and you achieved it. That's success. But fulfillment and purpose isn't laser focused. It's microscopically focused. And they go, what do you mean? If you look down a microscope at a drop of water, you suddenly see an entire universe open up inside that microscope. We're looking down and in, not out. And they go, well, will I lose my laser beam focus? And the answer is yes, for a short period, because you're focused. But what happens is that microscopic focus feeds the laser focus. But now you're being driven to that same level of success with that same level of determination, but from a place of fulfilling your soul, serving others, making a unique difference in the world that only you can do. I can't make the difference Gary can make. I can't make the difference Warwick can make.
Absolutely.
Every one of us has our own unique gift to bring.
I almost feel like you help people's souls be fulfilled, and almost a sense you're a liberator of souls. You help.
Yeah, it's not a word I can use. Gary will back that up from marketing. Ooh, another woo. Yeah. Oh, he's going to come over and rub my crystals. I can feel it. Are you rubbing your crystals, or is it just the way you're sitting? That's not who I am. Right. But it is deeply spiritual. But as you can get from my personality, there's nothing woo-woo about me. No. But spiritual and woo-woo don't have to be the same. You've probably put them in the same category, but they're not. Right. Spiritual really is connecting to your soul to have action in the world.
Absolutely.
And I like what you said, Dov, when you went through the several ways in which we disenfranchise parts of ourselves. Because here's why I think that's important to listeners of this podcast in particular. This is called Beyond the Crucible. We talk about crucible experiences and what you can learn from them, how you can not bounce back from them, but bounce forward from them, change the trajectory of your life in a good way. Yes. And disenfranchising parts of yourself is a way to self-crucibilize yourself, isn't it?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is why people will become, and they are shocked to say, I haven't gone through a crucible moment. I haven't, Dov. You know, I've got $1 billion. I've got a big house. I've got a yacht in Monte Carlo. I bought the wife a new set of hoo-has. You know, I've got myself a new Rolex. I've got all that stuff. I haven't had a crucible moment. And I say, really? And they go, yeah. I say, how many times have you secretly cried, even without tears? It's not an event. In my case, it's certainly an event.
Sure.
In Warwick's case, it's an event. In the guy who had a heart attack, maybe it's an event.
Sure.
But it's not. And I always say this. Here's how I will explain it to you. I take a stick of dynamite and I shove it in a rock. I light the dynamite. What happens? You go, the rock cracks open. I go, great. What happens if I take 30 years and just drop water, one drop at a time, every second on that same rock? Does it still not split? And they go, yeah, it does. It's actually more painful because it's not rapid. And the level of tolerance psychologically goes up. This is the problem. Human beings are tolerant. One of the great teachings is that we should be tolerant. And I always say that's a terrible teaching. Please don't be tolerant. Be compassionate, be caring, be loving. But tolerance is putting up with. Don't be tolerant. I'm not tolerant. I'm compassionate, I'm empathetic, I'm understanding, but I don't want to be tolerant of things that are breaking that rock down that is my soulful foundation. So you're absolutely right, Gary. People are dripping on their own soul, and they're creating a crucible in a fractional second over and over and over again, selling a little shaving of their soul every day. And they go, well, there was no real event. No, I get it. You've been doing the event. You've been buying into the family mechanism. You've been buying into the family doctrine day after day, week after week, year after year. You're following a family business that is in something that you would have nothing to do with if you were suddenly brought into this, but you feel a responsibility. This is a problem.
Yeah.
So you're right. Absolutely, you're right.
You know, it reminds me of I think it's Thoreau had this quote, people leading lives of quiet desperation. That's kind of like what some of these folks, drip by drip, their soul, their happiness, their joy is eroding, even if on the outside they're successful. And it's just like drops of acid year after year. It's and you're really trying to, I know it sounds a bit woo-woo, but you're trying to save these people. But in saving them, I agree with you 100%. They will be even more successful and more fulfilled and serve others and have tangible impact in other people's lives. I mean, that stuff is real.
If you're measuring your success by the numbers in a bank account, it's never going to fulfill you.
Right.
You know, and as you mentioned earlier, Warwick, in the book, I talk about the eulogy. Mm-hmm. And, you know, you have to, if you've ever, and as you listen to this, I'll tell you the piece from the book. If you've ever been to a funeral, I've been to lots. You know that the person delivering the eulogy, what their job is to dry clean the person who died. They take out all the dirty spots.
Right.
That's the job of the eulogy, right? And I can clearly remember going to my friend's dad's funeral. My friend's dad was I don't know if I can say dick on here, but we'll go with that and maybe you can beep it. But he was just not a good guy. He was a really terrible human being. Mm-hmm. But at the eulogy, my friend asked me to come to this funeral. I didn't want to go, but my friend said, I need your support. So I went. I said, I'll sit in the back, but I'm not sitting in the front. He goes, okay. And the person at the front gave a eulogy about a story that I'd never heard. And it was about how my friend's dad had paid the rent of a neighbor back in the 60s and never asked for the money back when this person was really desperate. That's a beautiful act. It was the only decent thing he did. He also used to tie my friend to the hot water boiler and whip him with a Hot Wheels track. And he wasn't the only one. He did it to his siblings and he did it to the mother. You know, this is not a good human being, but everybody's going to remember this story. That's what a eulogy is. It's a dry cleaning of your history. Okay. But here's the thing. As we sat at that funeral, we sat at the back. And the people at the back were my friend, who definitely knew his dad, and me, and the way I'd gotten to know him, and other people. And I listened to the whispers. What are the whispers? The whispers were that he was an ass. The whispers were that he was mean and he was cruel. And those were the whispers, not the eulogy. And you, as you listen to this, no matter what they get up front and talk about, how you started the Dingle Dongle Research Foundation, you got a name of a wing of a hospital after you, and you've started a foundation for lost dogs or whatever the heck it is. Great. Okay, wonderful. That all those things are good. They're not bad. But is that the dry cleaned version? So I challenge you in the book and in my work with the people. I challenge them and I say, here's the challenge. What are you afraid they'll whisper? You've got to go to that. Not just what do you want to say, the eulogy. What are you afraid they'll whisper? So in part of my eulogy is Dov was a courageous man who lived his life helping others fulfill their soul's purpose. It's not all of it, but it's part of it. Okay? But it starts with courageous men. So what do you think I'm afraid they'll whisper at the back? Come on, guess.
You said your friend's dad was a dick. That they say that about you? Was that one of the things you fear?
No. If the front of mine is that Dov was a courageous man who lived his life, blah blah blah, my fear is that Dov is a coward. You have to go to the opposite. Right. Now, my ego immediately jumps in and goes, I'm not a coward.
Right.
Think about all these crazy stunts I did. That's not cowardly. Think about it. And I go through all these reasons to justify that I'm not a coward. So that doesn't work on its own because my ego can justify that I'm not a coward. So I went, I got to test this.
Yeah.
So I said, what if I add an expletive? I won't say what the expletive is, but it starts with F and ends with K. No, ing. Right?
Yes.
So Dov was a F-ing coward. Ooh, that punches a little bit.
Right.
But still, my ego could fight.
Yeah.
And I go, okay, what if I have 5 grandchildren? What if one of my grandchildren is a little bit older, sits in the back and says that?
Yeah.
Devastating.
Absolutely.
Whether it's true or false doesn't matter.
Right.
It's devastating.
Yeah.
So what does that do? The pull forward is the eulogy. I want to be. Dov was a courageous man who lived his life serving others in finding their soul's purpose. Yes, I want to be that guy. So I'm working towards that every day. But when I feel lazy, when I feel I've got a lot of great excuses for not doing it, I remember the whispers of my grandchildren. And I go, get off your ass, Dov, and do what you need to do. Even though you're terrified, even though you don't want to do it, even though you're feeling lazy, even though you've got all the justification for not doing it, because I don't want those whispers.
And you want to live your soul's purpose every day. And
all day.
And none of us are perfect. I mean, I have days in which I'm not my best self and say, okay, that wasn't a great day. I can do better. And you do better. You apologize, whatever you need to do. But, you're not measured by, we're going to have moments when we don't live up to the highest ideals of our soul's purpose, but day in, day out, overall, is that the norm of your life, or is it a bit like your friend's dad? There was one kind act amidst a sea of a million torments and tortures of others, which that's really the key, right? Is in the sum total. Is this? I had a few days when I wasn't at my best self, or maybe a few months or whatever. But in total, on average, day in, day out, in your case, I did live a courageous life in service of others.
Right.
At that point, from my faith perspective, there's a scripture that says, well done, good and faithful servant. And I'm sure there's echoes of that in other faith traditions. That's what we all want, whatever eternity is going to be, right?
Yeah, and the thing about this that I really want to make clear in case I haven't, and this is really important, this is not about you being perfect.
Right.
So, again, as I talked about at the beginning, I've studied all these religious philosophies, and I'll often meet people of faith, not necessarily Christian, but of whatever faith, and I can see their torture. It's clear to me. And I go, it's interesting to me that I can see your torture, yet you talk about being of faith. And they go, yeah. And I say, do you know anything about the Bible? And they'll go, yeah. And I go, okay, great. So can I ask you what you know about Moses? Mm-hmm. And they go, not much. Moshe Rabbeinu, one of the forefathers of the Jewish faith. Mm-hmm. Do you know that he murdered an Egyptian? No. Yeah, he murdered an Egyptian. He's a murderer.
Right.
Okay, so pretty good guy, still held high, but he was a murderer. What about David, King David? He was the
Just
great
thinking.
shepherd, right?
Yeah.
He was anointed by God. What about him? What do you know about him? Well, God chose him to be the king. Yeah, but here's the thing you might not know about him. That while he was the king, he saw this really hot chick. Her name was Bathsheba. Man, she had some booty. He was like, I'm in there, right? But she was married. And so what did he do? He sent her husband off to the front lines to get killed so he could get himself some action.
Exactly.
Oh, apparently he wasn't perfect. Then there's this other bloke. You might have heard of him. What was his name now? I think he was Mexican. What was his name? Jesus. Yeah, Jesus. Jesus. You might have heard of him. Now, one day he's hanging out at a temple, he's having a chat with people, and he's trying to help them and guide them. And all of a sudden he sees these people ripping people off, their money changers, ripping people off, and he loses his rag, he loses his temper, he gets pissed off, he turns over the table and starts whipping them. So if Jesus is allowed a temper, if David's allowed to be horny, if Moses is allowed murder, the fact that you were not so great today is going to be okay, I promise you. The only thing to do is to course correct. It's not to stay on that path, it's to course correct. And I don't say that to make light of any of those faith stories. Sure. I say it because I believe they're there to teach that lesson. While you're in the flesh, you have an ego. While you have an ego, you will fail. That's okay. Course correct. It's not about perfect.
Yep. That sound that you just heard, listener, wasn't just another well-delivered point by Dov, but it was also the captain turning on the fasten seatbelt sign saying that the time is approaching. It's not here yet, where we need to put this Beyond the Crucible plane on the ground. Before we do that, though, Dov, I would be remiss if I did not give you the chance to tell our listeners how they can find out more about you and your services. How can they do that online?
I appreciate that entirely. Thank you. I'm easy to find, DOVBARON. If you Google that, you're only going to find me. And you'll find many thousands of pages. But you can obviously find me at dovbaron.com, DOVBARON.com. You can also find either of my podcasts on the usual places that you listen to podcasts. I have the Leadership and Loyalty podcast, which Warwick will be on in I think it's the beginning of 22 rather. He'll be on there. So that's Leadership and Loyalty. And we also have the Curiosity Bytes podcast, which is also, you can find on the usual platforms. Yeah, I'm on YouTube. There's over 1,000 videos on there. Instagram, LinkedIn, Facebook, all those places. And I also have an outlet on Medium called The Dragon's Den, where you can find my articles. I mean, basically, I'm nauseatingly out there. If you want to find me, it won't be difficult.
Excellent. Warwick, take the last question or two.
Yeah, well, thank you so much, Dov. I love how you're really fighting for people's souls, true selves. There might be leaders, maybe some are successful, maybe some are successful at a smaller level. Maybe in Thoreau's words, their leading lives are quiet desperation. Maybe they've had a big crucible, maybe it's a series of small ones. What's a word of hope that you would give them where they might be thinking, this eulogy thing, if I died tomorrow, I'd be a little worried. So what's a message of hope you would give for those folks?
It's never too late. It's never too late. The only part of you that says it's too late is ego. It's never too late. And what I want you to know is this, as a message to your soul, is who will suffer if you continue to play small. And by small, I don't mean success-wise. Who will suffer if you continue to ignore that deep driving purpose within you? You came to this life for a reason. You did not get your hopes and dreams by accident. They are your soul crying out for expression. And when you step into that, when you claim that, and you can, that is within you. You have the power within you right now. Even though whoever they are saying you can't, there is within you a magnificence so powerful that it can transform not only your life, but the lives of everyone that you touch. But to do that, you must be willing to abandon that which you're attached to in order to get to what you want. You cannot step into the promised land while holding on to something that will never fulfill you. There is magnificence in you, and you deserve to bring it to the world. The world needs you because, as I said earlier, I cannot deliver Gary's message. I cannot deliver Warwick's message. No one else is you. You are uniquely made by the creative force of the universe, whatever you want to call it, to deliver your message. And you can only do that if you tap in to your soul's purpose. And then you will have more success than you've ever dreamed, but you'll have so much fulfillment and so much love. And you'll have joy, not just happiness, not transitory, but true joy. And that is worth dying for.
I have been in the communications business long enough to know when the last word on the subject has been spoken, and Dov Baron has just spoken it. Listener, you have heard me say when I close out shows a lot, here are 3 takeaways. If I tried to only give you 3 takeaways from this incredible episode, we'd be here for an hour of me trying to do that. So here's what I want to do instead. Dov asks some questions in his book that we've been talking about. And I want to leave you with those questions that he asks the readers of his book to ponder, so that you can ponder them in the context of this conversation we've just had. So here are those questions. First question, what exactly is my purpose? Ask yourself that question. Explore those answers. Second question, what is that value that I have given or could give to all those around me? What can you give away? How can you live, as we've talked about here, in service to others? The third question, what is that thing everyone else sees in me that I can't? Could be a very positive thing. Could be those whispers at the back of the eulogy that Dov talked about. So what are those things? Explore some of that. Take some learnings from that. And the fourth question from the book is, what is my own genius blind spot and what has it cost me? We could do an entire series on this podcast on that subject. But as for now, planes on the ground, we're getting our bags out of the overhead compartments and it's time to go. So we thank you for spending this time with us. And until we're together the next time, please remember this, that came through loud and clear in this episode of Beyond the Crucible. Your crucible experiences, we know, are painful. Our crucible experiences have been painful. Sometimes, in Dov's case, very physically painful. In Warwick's case, emotionally painful. But here's the good news. It's not the end of your story. It is, in fact, if you learn the lessons of that crucible, if you apply those lessons, those learnings, and they lead you to move in a different direction in your life, move beyond, as the title of this show is, Beyond Your Crucible. It's not the end of your story. In fact, it's the beginning of a brand new story, which can be the best story of your life, because where that story takes you is to a life of significance.